Hello everyone and welcome to an amazing game that just finished from round 1 of the Sinquefield Cup 2025. It is world number 4 Praggnanandhaa versus world number 5, but also world classical champion Gukesh D, and it's a pretty wild game. It's a miniature that could have been resolved in some 25 moves, but of course you have to fight it on, and then it took some, I believe, 35 or 37 moves. But it is a great game, and the two of them have played many games together. I think this is their 15th classical game altogether. 9 games were drawn. 3 games that were won by Gukesh and 2 games were won by Pragg. As Pragg mentioned in an interview, he was unable to beat Gukesh even once in the last 2 years, and in 3 of the games that he was winning, and he just couldn't beat him. So Gukesh has improved immensely, and yeah, it's it's just the way it is. They're both incredible. They both had chances in the 2024 candidates tournament. You work hard, you qualify for the candidates, and only one can challenge the world champion. Gukesh was able to win, and Pragg got 5th place at the candidates. So we'll see what happens in the next one. Could go either way. We could have literally anyone challenging Gukesh for the title. But yeah, like I said, it's a beautiful game. Let's dive straight into it. Pragg with white opens with pawn to d4. Sorry about that. We have knight to f6 by Gukesh, pawn to c4. We have pawn to e6 and knight to c3. Nowadays, everyone just plays knight f3. The anti-Nimzo avoids bishop to b4. But Pragg says, nope, I want to fight. And Gukesh says, I want to fight as well. Bishop to b4, we have the Nimzo-Indian defense on the board. Pawn to e3, castles, and bishop to d3. This is the so-called bishop attack, and it's a very, very standard idea. Pawn to d5, a3, and here is where we sort of deviate from what everyone plays. Bishop captures on c3 is pretty much an automatic, but here we have d captures on c4. And okay, bishop captures on c4. We have bishop back to e7, so the bishop remains in the game. Knight f3 and pawn to c5, opening up the center. Of course, makes sense as the white king is still in the center of the board. Castles kingside and pawn to a6, preparing pawn to b5. So first d captures on c5, and now queen captures on d1. Bishop captures on c5 is much more common. Pragg even said in an interview after the game that queen captures on d1 caught him a little bit by surprise. But as you can see, of course, you could see if I've actually enabled the clock times, which I will do presently. So just give me a few seconds. Like I said, we jump from games that have clock times to games that don't. So I sometimes forget to turn it on in the interface. There we go. Sorry about that, but we basically didn't need the clocks up until this moment. But yeah, Pragg has he started off with an hour and 30 minutes, and he's hour and 31 minutes. So he blitzed literally everything out. Rook captures on d1, and now bishop captures on c5. And here, Pragg played bishop back to e2, first move where he actually spent some time, and it is now already as of move 12 that we have a completely new game. So okay, Gukesh goes knight to c6, and he has, if he can get his light square bishop somehow into the game and play, rook d8, then he should be completely fine. So Pragg will do everything he can to avoid that. He plays pawn to b4, chases away the bishop, bishop to a7, and bishop to b2. Okay, rook to d8, offering a trade of rooks, and now already Gukesh is in a pretty bad situation. Pragg does not take advantage of it in a most proper way. He played knight to e5. Should have played rook captures on d8, but again, it's hard to say. Both moves, neither move is crushing or winning on the spot. So maybe even what Pragg played, at their level is even better. Who's to say what's what? But yeah, knight captures on d8 and rook to d1. It's very, very hard for black to defend, because now you cannot go bishop to d7. And if you go knight to c6, then comes knight e5, and now you cannot go bishop to d7. When the rook was still on d8, bishop to d7 will be an option. So as that's what was played in the game. So here let's say king to f8, knight captures on c6, b captures, rook to d8 with check, king to e7, and now something like rook to h8. preventing any and all development. If you go bishop to b7, then you can capture. For example, captures, you capture on a6, you win a nice pawn, you have the passed a pawn, and you push this for a win. But in the game, Pragg played knight to e5 right away, and now you have bishop to d7. The rook is still on d8, so the bishop on d7 is defended. But Pragg captures it, knight captures on d7, and now knight captures on d7. Rook captures on d7 is what Gukesh should play, and after captures and captures, knight to e4, rook to d8. And now everything is fine. You don't have to worry about rook to d1, as the knight from d7 can move. The knight on c6 guards the rook on d8, and if let's say king to f1, you're going to go bishop to b8, and okay, it's a very nice position. Slowly but surely you will develop everything. But he played knight captures on d7, and now Pragg goes knight to e4, and here we have knight to b6. Spending pretty much all of his time. He's now down to 11 minutes and 49 seconds. Knight b6 is a great move. If you go for something like king to f8, let's say you just try to get the king into the game, then you go knight d6, you attack the pawn. If rook a b8, you defend, rook 8 to c1, and there really isn't a good move for black. The knight here is controlling the rooks and the back rank, and really nothing. For example, you go knight to f6, bishop to f3, now with the threat of knight captures on b7, and then bishop captures on c6. And if knight to e7, you just go rook c7, and nothing can move. The rooks cannot move, the knight cannot move due to rook captures on f7, so it's a dead position for black. So knight to b6, the move Gukesh played, is excellent. We have knight to c5 and rook 8 to b8. The only way for Gukesh to defend the b7 pawn. And now look at this. Knight captures, rook captures on d8. We have knight captures on d8. You cannot capture with the rook. You have to defend that b7 pawn. Bishop to e5, attacking the rook, rook to e8, and now pawn to e4. Beautifully played, saying you have no moves here. So okay, Gukesh finds a move that he can play to activate bishop to b8. Although it's interesting that he didn't go rook to c8 first. But okay, bishop to b8. We have bishop to d4. Of course, Pragg avoids the trade. He likes Gukesh's pieces completely inactive. And now knight to c8. It's the top move recommended by the engine, but just a very, very sad reality for Gukesh here. Rook to d1, and here we have bishop to d6. With knight to e7, maybe you can still, play on with some moves, but still, very, very hard to actually find them. And Gukesh is already down to 4.5 minutes. He played bishop to d6, and now Pragg is completely winning. But the question is, what move do you play here? So have at it. Win the game for Pragg. Bishop to e5 is the move. If you decided to go pawn to e5, that's a very nice move. But the problem is, of course, the bishop will just move to f8, and now you don't have anything. You do have concrete moves. Bishop f3 is very nice. And now after, let's say, knight to c6, you will always have knight captures on b7. Knight captures on d4, rook captures on d4, and now let's say knight to b6, knight to d8, opening up a discovery, rook to c8, threatening rook to c1, and now something like knight back to c6. Okay, white is much, much better, but you still have to fight quite a lot. But after bishop to d6, bishop to e5 was played, and now there is nothing Gukesh can do here. He goes bishop to e7, bishop to c7, attacking the knight on d8. We have knight to c6, and now just knight captures on b7. Gukesh now completely falls apart. He plays pawn to g5. He had to start playing really quickly, and now bishop to f1. A beautiful move by Pragg, as if he just goes rook to c1, which is a move you really want to play, then knight d4 can be somewhat annoying, and you don't want to blunder something when you're just about to beat the world classical champion in a classical game. So bishop to f1, we have pawn to g4 by Gukesh, and rook to c1 by Pragg. Knight to d4, and now pawn to a4. It was There were some other moves to consider, like knight c5 and then a4 to prevent any and all tactics. But okay, Gukesh had 44 seconds to find it, and he missed it. He played pawn to f6. There was a lot of talk about bishop captures on b4 here, but even with the best play, it doesn't save black. It's a really fun line. You can go rook c4, you attack both bishop and knight, and after bishop to e7, okay, you capture on d4, and now rook a7. And okay, what do you play here? Well, you have bishop to f4, and now after rook captures on b7, bishop captures on a6, attacking the rook and knight. And if you go rook b1 check, you can simply go back bishop to f1. But now rook a1, okay, you have the rook behind the passed pawn, so it's not that easy for white to push, but all in all, white is winning. But okay, after a4, Gukesh played pawn to f6 with the idea of pawn to e5. He wanted to cement the knight on d4, and Pragg just played pawn to e5 himself. We have knight to a7 and bishop to d6. Again, you can play a lot of moves. E captures on f6, bishop to d6, the move Pragg played. You could go rook c4 after the knight. So pretty much every move is winning here for Pragg, but those are the positions that are most dangerous, and you know where treachery lurks the most. So here bishop to d6, you know, avoiding any tricks. Knight a to c6, and now just pawn to b5. A captures, creating a beautiful passed b pawn. Bishop captures on d6, and now there are a couple of ways Pragg could maybe make a mistake. Like if you play b captures on c6, then bishop captures on e5, and you're not going to win this game. This is going to be a draw. Or if you play knight captures on d6, which is still probably winning. After knight captures on e5, you still have to work for like b6, rook to b8, pawn to b7. Now you can block with the knight e to c6. And okay, I mean, it's not a lot, but black has something to play for. But after bishop captures on d6, Pragg, of course, played the strongest. E captures on d6, and that is it. Two passed pawns now. You cannot fight against those. Knight to e5 was played. Rook to d1, attacking the knight. Now rook to b8, offering a trade of knights, but just knight to c5. And he was in this position on move 36 that Gukesh D, world classical champion, resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So a sensational start for Praggnanandhaa, who was world number 4 on the live ratings when he started this game. But now after beating Gukesh, he overtakes Fabiano Caruana and is now world number 3. But as Fabiano is still playing his game, that could also change. So, you know, I will keep you guys informed. And like I said, going into this match, Gukesh had 3 wins to Pragg's 2. Now it's 3-3, and they are equal in classical. And here you resign because, well, what do you do? The knight here is hanging. If you move the knight, the passed d pawn is just winning. And if you play knight captures on b5, doesn't matter. Still pawn to d7, let's say knight to c6, only move that sort of controls the d8 square. Knight captures on e6, and that is it. After king to f7, you will simply promote this pawn to a queen. Knight captures with check, and that's it. You're up a full bishop. After something like king e8, you can just move the knight. You can also trade if you want. Captures, you're now up a full knight. So whatever you play is completely winning here. 3 pawns each, you're up a full knight. Of course, doesn't matter who you're playing, someone's uncle or a world classical champion, a knight is a knight, as you all know who said that. So yeah, beautifully played by Pragg. It was really amazing. He mentioned in the interview after the game that there was this position where d captures on c5 was played. He said that bishop captures on c5 sort of is a must, and that queen captures on d1 gives white a lot of chances. And that's also one of the reasons why it's very, very dangerous to only look at what the engine says. The engine says, yes, bishop captures on c5 is slightly better, like it values it at like 0.49, and queen captures queen is 0.61. And, you know, when you just look at the numbers, it seems like, okay, you know, I could go either way. But if you understand the position, obviously, the way Pragg does, you know that, yeah, bishop captures on c5 is the way to go. And obviously why most people play that. Of course, Gukesh knows that. He thought maybe, okay, this will give him some chances. But yeah, Pragg is just a spectacular player. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Beautifully done by Praggnanandhaa. We'll see how this affects the rest of his tournament, how it affects Gukesh's tournament. Gukesh also started some other tournaments with a loss, and then he just started obliterating everyone. So, it's going to be very exciting. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to thank Gerhard Henkelmann, Derek King, Hernan Escalante Jr., Robert Kiefer, and Edmund Freeman for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.